Hi, this is JP Morgan.
And this is Kenneth Merrill.
And we're here in Las Vegas.
Let's do that one more time, sorry.
Hi, this is JP Morgan.
And this is Kenneth Merrill.
And today we're in Las Vegas.
Las Vegas!
Yes, the land of Las Vegas. Here we are here. And we have the new Sony announced camera, the A7 III, which is a fabulous, they call it a basic camera in a very souped up sort of way. So let's talk about the things we have that really this camera does.
Well, it inherits a lot of things from the A9, which is pretty amazing because it's half the price.
Yeah.
Has super fast frames per second, I mean 10 frames per second, which is great for a $2,000 camera. Has 693 autofocus points, which is also nice. And they're saying that the low light performance is supposedly very good on this.
Which we're gonna test. We're gonna take a look at that low light and see how it looks and just see how the shadows hold up. Put it through its test. It's really interesting because this feels like kind of a bringing together of some of the things from the A9, some of the things from the R3, and kind of into a basic package that's $2,000. So for someone who's just starting out as a wedding camera, because of the speed that you get, that's really a great feature for shooting weddings.
Yeah, for sure, especially if you're going to be buying multiple camera bodies, two camera bodies. It's easier to do two A7 IIIs than two A9s.
Yes, it is.
Or even A7 R3s.
About $2,000 or $3,000 easier. So there you have it.
All right, let's get to it.
So we'll get to it. So we're back at our plush studio here at our room back at the W here in Las Vegas. We got our nice white couch, our little 50s couch, and our white table. It's a whole new look for the Slanted lens.
New branding.
New branding, at least for this one video. Yeah. We've been with the Sony group here in Las Vegas, looking at their new camera that's come out, the A7 III, and so we're just excited to kind of give you a rundown of some of the things that it does. This is really an interesting camera because they called it a basic camera.
Yeah.
But they were, as they said basic, they were wanting to make sure that you didn't feel like it meant that it wasn't capable.
Yeah, I think the idea here is that they're trying to say this is sort of like the bottom line of what a full frame camera can be, and if you're gonna, I think they're kind of putting a challenge out to the other companies, saying, you know, if you are going to beat Sony, then you're going to have to beat these specs.
Well, let's just take a look at some of the features as we tested them, and we'll go from there. So.
The first one we wanted to look at was the autofocus, the new eye tracking. So they've had the eye tracking autofocus for a while, but I guess it's better implemented in this camera than their others.
We just set, and she's kind of in the shadow, which was a great test because she's not in super bright light as she comes across walking towards us, but as she does, it holds on her eyes, and she moves into nicer light when we get up front here, but it stayed with her the whole way.
Yeah, it was pretty, I mean, I was super impressed.
And I'm pretty wide open on this. We're on a 2.8 lens.
What I love about it is, you know, focus tracking has been around for a long time, of course, but how many times do you shoot something like this and every 2 out of 3 images are focused on the nose or the ear or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
The fact that this is grabbing the eye, which is what you want, and just following that is insane.
And they're spot on, every one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, every one of them. We did it 2 or 3 times, and it just stayed right with her. You know, even though she was going in and out of shadows and brighter light, it worked extremely well.
Yeah,
We're very pleased. So one of the things I was very impressed with when we looked at the camera is the ISO, the way the ISO responded. We started at 400 ISO on our test because we couldn't get our exposure low enough to be able to go to 200, 100. We're shooting at night on the strip. So we started at 400. It's extremely clean at 400.
Yeah, super clean, kind of exactly what you expect from a modern digital camera.
Yep.
800 looks great. This photo's not super fair because one of the lights turned off. It got a little dark.
Yep.
1600 still looks super great. I would totally shoot at 1600.
In the blacks are clean. You don't get that kind of chromatic noise going on. It looks very clean. We start to see it at 3200.
A little bit. You look at, you know, the
Little
shadows
bit.
on my forehead and stuff, you start to see some of the noise.
If I'm in an event situation, I would shoot at 3200. on
Yeah,
this
events.
camera.
I think 3200 is where I'd start to think, okay, what's my output? What's my limit? You know, and
Yep.
is this supposed to be like a fashion editorial? Because then I might start looking into a strobe or something. 6400 is starting to push it a little bit. It's still usable. I think you could still print with this.
But you're starting to get, it's starting to look a little bit like grain. When you get to 12,800, it definitely looks like grain.
Yeah, beyond, honestly, I've never shot a photo at 12,800, and beyond this point, I'm not really interested because I just don't see myself shooting this high. I mean, maybe in the future, but right now you definitely see the chroma noise
Yes.
all over the image.
25,600, it's starting to look, I mean, when you blow that up on your face, it's
Yeah, it's
all over the place.
to denoise this, you just lose all the detail.
Yeah.
And you'd have to denoise it because otherwise it looks weird. But again, you know, I don't shoot this high. I would rarely shoot beyond 3200. So it's like, oh, it has a usable 3200. Awesome.
Yeah.
This is a great camera.
And in most situations, you know, if you're in an event situation, there's enough light that 3200 is probably
Yeah.
going to work for it. And if
Yeah.
you bring just a tiny little bit of light, it's going to work. But you can go higher. The 6400 was not, you know, it's starting to fall apart a little bit. You'd have to work on trying to denoise it, but it certainly, if you had to, you could go to it.
Yeah. Let's look at the video side of things. I'm really interested to see how, you know, in the future, how this compares to the A7S III when that comes out. So we started this test at ISO 800, and it looks clean enough. You do see a little bit of noise, but I think, you know, that's acceptable in video. You kind of expect
Yeah,
it.
you do. It certainly looks good. 1600, it's still...
Yeah, 1600 looks great. If I was shooting a video on the strip, shooting at 1600, I wouldn't be afraid
No.
of that at all.
When you go to 3200, I mean, we're just getting a little, if you see, but that's
You
a
do start
400%.
to see it. Yeah, this is a
400%, which is a lot.
400% blow up. So if you look at the regular image, it looks fine.
It looks very clean at 3200, but that blow up, you start to see some.
At 6400, you start to see the color kind
Yeah.
of go sideways a little bit, which I guess you expect at some point. I don't know if I would push it as far as 6400. And then
12,800 is definitely its own animal.
Yeah.
Yeah, the color definitely has shifted a little bit. But you know, these cameras have come so far. This is basic, you know,
Yeah,
the basic model.
basic.
You know, which is delivering a very acceptable ISO up to 3200.
Yeah.
You know, which gets you in acceptable low light situations that most everyone's going to be in.
I mean, I think the bottom line is this has better, you know, I would shoot this at 3200 ISO pretty comfortably. I would hesitate to shoot like a Nikon or a Canon at 3200.
Yeah.
You know, I think this might have a one-stop advantage, is the bottom
At
line.
least that, yeah. So this camera has several different frame bursts. You got a low, kind of a mid, a high, and a high plus.
Yeah.
And it's just more frames per second as you go through. So we shot some of these on high plus, which is giving you the maximum number of frames. You just hold down the shutter and it's going to just keep firing.
Yeah, up to about 90, 100 frames.
Yeah.
Our friend Daniel had this water tank set up and all these sprinklers, and we had these dancers kind of doing these leaps and splashes and stuff in the water. Kind of
So
the
you
perfect
see
thing for this.
It was really nice for this because she's jumping and you're wanting to catch the motion of her jumping, and you know, you're trying to anticipate that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're shooting with a, like, imagine shooting this on film, it would be incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to catch that peak moment where they kind of reach the apex of their jump. And with this camera, you just hold down as soon as you start to see them rev
come
up,
up.
you just hold that shutter release down, and you get it.
This really becomes an action application. If you're shooting motocross, or you know, even your bride who's walking down the aisle. I mean, there's so many different applications where you want to get several frames. You don't want to miss the moment. This helps you get the frames before and after and get that moment as you're shooting, because you can just hold it down and get a variety of frames through that entire process.
So one of the things that always interests me with the A7 cameras is because you can shoot full frame and crop frame in video mode, is which one's better. And in the past, crop frame has typically been better because you have like the faster readout on the sensor. It's usually
little
resolved, so
sharper
it's a little
sometimes.
sharper. But the cool thing about this camera is that it, when you shoot full frame, it's actually downscaling the full 6K image to 4K. So you're not pixel binning or line skipping like some cameras have in the past. So we did a little comparison here, and on the left you have your full frame image, and then on the right you have your crop frame image of the same wall. And at 100%, they look identical, but you blow it up to 400%, and even then, there's almost like no difference between the two.
You really have to look to be able to see any difference here.
There might be a tiny, tiny bit more resolution in the crop frame, but it's almost like I had to stare at these for like 2 minutes to really come to a conclusion.
So really, you would choose the crop sensor if you want to have you got a 200 on and you want a 300 millimeter.
Yeah.
You know, to be able to have a little better reach there, and it looks like it holds up. You don't lose anything.
And I do suspect the rolling shutter is probably still a little better in crop frame, but even then, the thing is with like the image stabilization on these, the sensor stabilization, I don't really worry about rolling shutter as much as I used to.
It really negates a lot of that.
It negates a lot of that, unless you're shooting, fast-moving objects.
Yeah. But well, let's just take a quick look at the images and what we thought about the image quality, because we shot on some great sets in the Sony thing. We got this 50s kind of set with great color. We got some blue sky backgrounds. I mean, they just were really fabulous opportunities to look at the color rendition and to look at the images. And I was very impressed. I feel like the skin tones were extremely nice.
The skin tones look good. The color looks good. What I like about the Sonys is that the color is very, it pops a lot.
Mm-hmm. I'm impressed that the color rendition feels nicer to me. It feels a little warmer than what we've had in the past on a Sony, and I like that. I like that about the A7R III. I like about this on the A7 III.
They're definitely getting better with the color.
Yeah, I just think the color is really pretty. I think this is become a standard here that I think moving forward is really important, because I think the color rendition in the past sometimes bothered me a little bit, but not on these. I feel this is really where it needs to be.
Well, I think the shot of the guy on the couch is a great example of that, because you look at his face, and his face does have that sort of natural tonality. Mm-hmm. It does. I feel like in the past, Sony's always struggled with getting color in the face. It always felt a little bit too neutral. But in this scenario, it looks normal, which is what you're going for.
Yep. For me, it's been an interesting process because I've got Mark IIIs. I'm very comfortable shooting them. So moving over to that mirrorless world has been a little more of a challenge to work with the EVF and to feel comfortable shooting that way. But the more I do it now, it's become a natural way to shoot, just like the one was before, because that's just the way I had learned. This has become a natural way to shoot. There's some obvious options here that are an advantage. Size being one of them, frames per second being one of them. I mean, just so many different advantages that start to come into play here. I mean, look at the menus on the back of these cameras. There's so many different things they can do.
So, I mean, the real question is, do DSLRs still have a place? Sony would say no.
Yeah, Sony would absolutely say no. Sony would say no.
I'm not totally convinced. I mean, I like looking through a lens. I think EVFs, maybe in 5 years, the EVF will be good enough that I feel totally comfortable with it. I still like seeing real life. But anyways, I think this camera works super well for people that don't own a full frame camera already. Like, for sure, if you don't own a full frame camera and you're looking for one, this is the most competitive camera on the market by far.
Price-wise, absolutely.
If you already have Nikon lenses, if you're shooting like a Nikon crop camera or a Canon crop camera, and you have full frame lenses for those, which isn't everybody, it's a little bit harder. I mean, it's hard to convince people to switch from a system that they're already comfortable with, already shooting with.
Yeah.
But if you're getting into full frame, I think this is the camera you kind of have to recommend, because the color is looking way better than it used to. Sony's really improved on their color over the last couple of years.
They really have. If you look at the skin tones and a lot of these images we shot, skin tones look fabulous. The color is vibrant. There's a warmth to it that I think I've missed in the past that I think has now arrived with the A7R III.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just the feature set is it's hard to recommend a camera that does half as much at more money.
So for me, I think this is a great camera for a prosumer, somebody who wants to get into a full frame market and at an affordable price. It's great for wedding shooters. If you're going to have 2 cameras, or you're going to have another shooter, and you want to get these into people's hands. I think you have a great market for this camera that really becomes that prosumer introduction to the full frame at a $2,000 price. I think it's great. Battery life on this, same battery as the A7R III, which we shot all day on the battery. It was still at 68% at the end of the day.
Pretty awesome. You know, I think like the bottom line is, I was talking to Ken Rockwell in the elevator, and I just said, hey, what do you think about it? And he said, I think it's just great, because it's basically an A7R III with a lower pixel count at $2,000. And he said, I don't need the high pixel count.
Yeah. So if you don't need 40 megapixels,
Yeah.
You can save $1,000 and this camera becomes a great way to get in. And this thing does a few things that the A7R III doesn't do.
It's basically a top-of-the-line camera for $2,000 bucks, which is really awesome.
A little bit of a combination of the A9 and the A7R III.
Yeah.
So there you have it. So keep those cameras rolling.
Keep on clicking.
The way you can win this lens is by tagging Tamron and the Slanted Lens on our Instagram. You can also leave a comment and tag a friend. Also, you can post in stories, I'm gonna win this lens, but tag Tamron and the Slanted Lens, and that'll get you to enter as well. And last of all, you can go to theslantedlens.com and give us your email. That'll help you win as well. So get out there, tag, follow, email, tag, follow, email, tag, follow, email, and win this lens. You should subscribe to the Slanted Lens. It may not save your life, but why risk it? Just push that button right there.